We are back, and joining us in studio, we have three wonderful guests lined up for today. Honorable Oscar Requena, we have CEO Valentino Shal of the Rural Transformation Community Development, Ismail Kiras, who is the Executive Director of Economic Development Council. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I don't know, just they talk a lot about this exact same thing, so we just continue on to this conversation, right?
Certainly. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So,
Good morning.
the new Trade License Act, for those that are not necessarily tuned in, what was the Trade License Act and how have you now reformed it?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to start out by saying that the Trade Licensing Act dates back to 1966, so it's quite a very old piece of legislation. And certainly the Trade License Act regulates, the whole business in municipalities, as it is the whole legislation specifically addresses, city and town councils. Under the new proposed legislation, we are now incorporating, legislating for the rural areas as well, because there is definitely, as you know, under Plan Belize, the commitment that we made to the people of this country was that we are going to foster, economic development, and certainly that is what we're looking at. Part of, supporting and fostering that economic development is certainly to regulate how, business is done in the communities.
As the Director of Economic Development and Council, how do you see this as a innovation from what was previously done? I know that there are a lot of concerns from the citizens, so what do you have to say in terms of the positive actions for this new license?
Correct. Good morning. Good morning. It's great to be here. It's important to point out that given that work has been ongoing on this reform over the course of several years, dating back to 2014 actually, it's indicative that there has been a problem. There has been a problem with the current regime administering trade license. The primary concern by the business community has been that year on year, it was unpredictable what your trade license would be. And the reason for it is that there was no standard way of calculating trade license. It is still very subjective, and it's ad hoc, not transparent. And so the innovations that have been incorporated into what is being proposed in the new trade license bill is to have a standard methodology for calculating trade license, annual rental value that then leads into what the trade license ultimately is determined to be. Other innovations include transparency. The idea is to really publish and have every business owner, every enterprise know and be able to calculate for themselves what their trade license is. And if there is a difference of opinion, there is now a proposed mechanism for disputing that through a formal means through a tribunal. So those are some key innovations that have been included in.
So I guess either one of you can answer this question, but walk me through that methodology process then. In layman's terms, for my people who can't understand, I can't understand it. So walk me through that methodology process. What would that look like? Why is it that there's always this imbalance of how much you would pay?
Right. Yeah. Currently, the Act says that trade license is 25% of your annual rental value. Okay. The truth is that nobody really pays that. I think only banks and perhaps utility companies actually pay anything near that. And the reality is that it would be unrealistic and unaffordable to levy that high rate as prescribed by the law currently. So the truth is that nobody is in compliance with the law. And the reason for that then reducing the rate on a business by business basis is because of that stiff penalty that it would lead into. And so what is proposed is to categorize businesses by their type of business. So all barber shops, for example, would be a specific category versus banks in a different category, law firms, maybe even warehouses. So there's a list of about 20 different business categories. What the exercise that was undertaken and concluded even up to 2019 was the mapping of productive footprint of businesses right across every single business in every single municipality. And then a determination of who came nearest to the legally prescribed rate, and then using that as a base, right, for calculating square footage, the cost per square footage across categories in different zones of the city, and then you simply multiply the cost per square footage by your actual square footage to derive annual rental value. And what is being proposed now is that municipalities have the discretion to choose what rate of trade license they want to levy against that annual rental value. The reality is that it's going to be very simple. Everything will be published on municipality websites and the ministry website, so that any business falling into a category in a specific zone within an area can know what their cost per square footage is, measure their own square footage, and know how much they're supposed to pay.
Well, I want to take a step back just a little bit to talk about how we got to this point. Minister had started off talking about the old act. And so what was the process like to reach this point where we now have the proposed legislation? So in terms of consultation, perhaps look on the groundwork, taking into account all that you just said, what is the present reality and how the new act aims to fix some of the problems?
Yes, well, as Ishmael pointed out, this is a long, ongoing process. And when the new administration took over, we looked at it, and there were some very interesting and progressive things about the work that has already been done. So we sort of restarted the process and re-engaged with stakeholders, including the Mayors Association, the different town councils, because all of this has to do with local government, not national government. And so a lot of re-engagement back with them to say, okay, if we have this, what do you want to do with it? And they were very keen on moving it forward. So that was the first step to ensure that. And then, of course, we got approval to proceed with the process from central government. And then once we have crafted what we think is good, then we began to go out district by district, town by town, having meetings virtually because of the pandemic. And so that has continued, and we have a long list of stakeholders who may be affected by the bill, who have been consulted, because one of the features of the bill, for instance, is right now your trade licensing board is appointed by the municipality, by the council, and they can put whoever they want on the boards. But this new bill is saying, no, you can't do that. We will prescribe for you who you need to put. So you need to put somebody from the business community, you need to put somebody from real estate, you need to put somebody from different, representing different sectors of society on the board, so that you can have better decision making. And so those people who would be there were also part of the consultation process.
This is catering more for rural development. In the rural areas, the villages and so forth, how are you maneuvering through certain cultural differences and acts against this type of bill? The government and the alcalde system were never something that were one, and so now how are you making those ways into maneuvering that kind of process?
Very good question. I want to start out by saying that certainly under the bill, for the first time, we're looking at, creating, the legislation that is going to regulate businesses in the rural area and have those businesses that meet the criteria, pay their trade licenses. Why is this important? Over the years, since the Village Council Act was established, it was all part of, decentralization, promoting democracy in our communities and so on. But part of the big problem is that, successive governments have basically said, here's the law. We are giving you the autonomy, do what you can. But the resources were never there, the economic resources, and that has been part of the challenge. For the most part in rural areas, the only source of income generated was really from liquor licenses. And you have many small communities where, they do not have liquor licenses. So here is an opportunity where, we, as part of the regulatory process, we're also creating opportunities where establish businesses that meet the criteria of 600 square feet or more, can contribute, economically by paying their trade license to the village council. What this is going to do, and think about a community, for example, like Placencia, or think about a community like Kikaka, for example, where you have so many businesses. Think about the kind of, economic output that they're going to have for those communities. It's going to allow for these communities to, one, raise their revenue, but it is also going to allow for them to be able to provide the much needed services. You need to be able to pick up the garbage, to clean the parks, maintain the parks, whatever other services the village council needs to provide. So certainly we see this as a win-win for the communities. It's important to note that whatever revenue is generated goes, to the village council fund. It's going to go back to them, not to the consolidated revenue fund. To answer your question, how do we sensitize? How do we work with the communities? This is a very important process. It's an ongoing work that we are doing, and certainly we will have to engage, more with other stakeholders, and rightfully so. We do know that, for instance, in the Toledo district, where we do have, the alcalde system, and the other villages across the country, the village councils and other interested parties, we have to meet with them. We have to sensitize them. It's not like this is not being done, but we have to strengthen that, and certainly we will continue to do that. I want to say that part of the ongoing discussion is that since the bill was introduced on Friday, we have seen, unfortunately, a lot of concerns, and I say unfortunate because there's also been a lot of misinformation.
Right.
The concerns, are important. If people feel that they are affected, we stand ready to listen. As a government, we have the responsibility to listen to our people, particularly in relation to the concerns being expressed by the artist community. We have to listen. We are not a government here that is going to, impose taxes that are going to make it more difficult for the people. That's not the intention. Really, the intention is to improve the system. Part of that process requires that, we listen, we work with them, and if we have to make the necessary adjustments, we will make the necessary adjustments.
That was going to be my follow-up question, if there is room for revision. So, simple question, open for discussion. Why are taxes good?
Well, I mean, it's like a country functions with the resources that
Yes.
it generates.
I want it to be explained in a way that lists the concerns of the public and establishes how people get the generated funds back into the community.
The state, the government exists to provide services for the society and the communities, and in this case, local governments exist to provide services for whether it's the town or the city or the village, and so whatever they pay has to come back. And this is the thing, right? Especially for rural areas. If now some of these businesses are going to begin to be paying trade licenses, it's not all, because some villages don't meet the criteria, right? But where they do, then the councils have to become accountable to their communities and say, look, I am contributing. What am I getting back for this contribution that I'm making? And so this is the kind of engaged citizenship that has to happen in this country, so that people have skin in the game. Look, I am paying my trade licenses to you. We need better services. We need improved services in this community, and they can begin to make demands because they are making that contribution. At the moment, that doesn't exist, and so that's very important, and that's how it really is. And so all of the concerns, we understand that, because but it is important that for the government and the local governments to provide services, the revenue has to be there. And of course, you don't want to do it in a way, because there's nowhere else that revenue is going to come from. Even if you borrow from a foreign donor or a foreign IFI, you still have to pay through the taxation that you do. So it's very normal. It's normal course of business for states and societies like ours.
I think a very important process that we also have to support is the ongoing training and capacity building of our, village councils. Very, very important. And as the Ministry of Local Government, we have responsibility for oversight over village councils. And certainly, we have begun training, and we foresee that we have to strengthen this process, because definitely with additional revenue being generated, we have to ensure that village councils are accountable first and foremost to the community, to the Ministry of Local Government, since we have responsibility and oversight over them, and to ensure that at the end of the day, whatever taxes the citizens pay, that they get back their fair share of goods and services to improve their community and their well-being.
And that actually opens up another question which I was going to ask, and that's really about the monitoring and enforcement about some of the new regulations, especially in relation to some businesses which were sort of unregulated in the past, or that deal primarily in cash. So is that also something which is being reviewed, or does the act, in your view, or the new proposed legislation adequately sort of address the issues in relation to monitoring?
Yeah, well, we have to. Well, the trade license regulates trade. We have the Towns and City Council Act that regulate the work, the actual functioning of town and city councils. So we regulate them through that, which includes prudent financial management. But we also have a program that we're going to implement and roll out this year in order to build the capacity of village councils. And we have already started. We have started with the village of Kikaka, where we are computerizing their accounting system, because all these years the village council has been managing their accounts manually, and we came and we said, no man, we have to improve things. And so we're taking what we are doing with them. We are actually operating their financial management system with the way we do at a town or a city, because of the revenue that they currently generate and because of the money that they manage. And so we're going to take that and replicate that in other large villages and computerize their process, provide proper training, and ensure that they have the right personnel to manage these resources. But I think we're moving into local government, and I just wanted to clarify a few things about some of the misconceptions that have come up since this has been introduced. Is that small peddlers in rural areas are not affected by this bill whatsoever. In order for you to fall under the purview of the law, you have to be a business of a certain size, and we're saying 600 square feet, which is pretty significant. Anything under that, no issue whatsoever. So the information out there that people selling mango, or people have a food stall, or people with a vegetable stand in the village, or selling coconut water, none of that. We have no interest in that. As a matter of fact, we are interested in supporting them, not levying them any fee on them. So please, we need to clarify that right off the start. And also the issue with the peddlers. Peddlers is a term that is used in the existing law, and it's already being charged. Peddlers already make a contribution to the city councils, even in Belize City, right? So that is nothing new. That is simply moved from the old law into the new law, and so the questions of the peddlers, no such thing in rural areas. This thing already exists in the urban areas, and so that simply continues to be what it is. Now, in terms of the entertainers, again, people have concerns about that, and we need to address that, because this is not intended to in any way harm the entrepreneurial spirit of our artists or entertainers. As a matter of fact, we want to encourage that, but it is to regulate and to formalize them. And that is the way you grow. And so we will have to, I guess, through the Ministry of Culture, continue to engage with them directly, because that's not our purview. But a lot of the times, and a lot of this has come up because they need to engage with the formal financial system and the banking system, and often they're asked about their trade license and they can't produce any. And so this is sort of formalizing that for them, to be able to for them to be able to say, look, I am a legitimate business. And so if the fees and the parameters that were established in the current draft are too high, that can be revisited, and so that can be adjusted. That there's no issue there. But it is not to harm any small artist or any small entertainer or DJ. As a matter of fact, the intent is to look only at large public events, where you have large public events where there's a cover charge and there's lots of people attending, and that is actually what was intended in the law. Not not the private function that you will have at your
I guess
residence.
it goes back to what Ismail was saying about that fluctuation of how much you would make per annum, right? And I would imagine that is the ideal concern. But I want to kind of shift gears into, I guess, what Gavin was trying to ask in terms of how, not just how you monitor, but how do you monitor 40 years of not necessarily reinforcing certain laws and regulations in this country? It is no news to anybody that when certain laws are put in place, it stays there and everybody still does their own thing. So how is this going to be different? How are you planning to make sure that certain things stay standardized, even, you know, once it is amended and set? And I ask this is particularly for the creative and cultural sector, because certain villages will not just have a stand, but they will have an establishment, and that establishment can make it or break it within the year. So why will I pay $1,500 in a trade license if I'm going to be gone in like the next year?
Well, we have to be careful about the figures we
The
throw
figures,
around.
All right,
Exactly.
I just threw out a number. It was just a figure.
Yeah, so it would not be any such grand figure to begin with. But the other important thing about the feature of the bill that Ishmael did mention is that what it does is create predictability in the system, and certainty is that once you are assessed this year, that doesn't change for 3 years, unlike what it is now. Now, you know, somebody comes and see your place, and, you know, they can say, you know, whatever the fee is. And next year, a different person comes and they have a different view of your business, and they will charge you something else. And of course, you might have two businesses side by side, and they pay two different trade license fees simply because of who is assessing.
But why?
So what I'm saying is that what we're going to do now, and we're going to publish the information as to the formula as to how to calculate your trade license. You can calculate your own trade license, and beyond that, if you feel that you're not being fairly treated, you now have an avenue through a tribunal to make a case for yourself. And so that's part of the transparency of the process, which really doesn't exist now.
Okay, so how would
I just wanted to also add in that under the new proposed bill, there are certainly incentives, you know, for business owners and property owners. Under the old law, the current law right now, if you make improvements to your business premises, all those, you know, whenever they are assessed, will, you know, get taxed. You know, in other words, if you have your porch, you have your car park, whatever, your bathrooms and so on, all those are going to be assessed and, you know, will be levied a trade license. Under the new regime, there is an incentive for business owners and property owners. Only the productive space is going to be levied a trade license, exclusive of the other areas. And I think that is important. You know, people always think about, you know, so what incentive is there for me to improve my business premises if you're going to be taxing me? That is a key feature of the new bill. And we believe that is, you know, progressive thinking.
Yes, absolutely. But I guess it also queries and warrants into, for example, the average person that makes X amount of dollars pays X amount of taxes. And in Belize, we don't have tax returns. So again, how will I be seeing my trade license tax be beneficial for me and my community? Where will I put those assets? How will you put those assets? Because what's good for the neighbor might not be good for me.
Exactly.
So how are you discussing that with the different rural communities?
Well, it's all part of our mandate. You know, we have our rural development officers in all the districts, and certainly, you know, we also have our local government officers. So it's all part of an ongoing training and capacity building that we have to continue to work, you know, in ensuring that, you know, our leaders are prepared, that they are trained, and that, you know, they are informed, and also ensuring that, you know, we can have that oversight and accountability. Very, very important process.
I think a very, very important addition is the matter of, okay, well, what actually is a public service that that a council would provide, and that's the street maintenance, the lighting, garbage collection, park development, even events, you know, things like these services that benefit the public at large. one of the features of the proposed bill is to zone municipalities.
Right.
And that's going to be a way in which the trade license holder, the business, can actually see where their money is going, because by zone, there's going to be different rates of trade license levied across the different categories of businesses, so that within a downtown area, there can be the expectation that you have the highest level of service provision, so paved streets, perhaps patrols or lighting and things like that in that area. Whereas in a less developed area, the trade license will be a little bit lower. And as those areas begin to develop and as businesses in those areas begin to contribute to trade license, they can demand that more services are provided in those areas. And in that way, we can actually spread development within municipalities right across the country, and including villages. And so I think it's important to really say that, people will see where their money is going because of then the councils themselves will have more predictable revenue streams. And that's another thing that is a feature of this, that in designing the new methodology, revenue neutrality was paramount because we couldn't take away from what the municipalities were earning. But now going forward, there's going to be a reliable stream that the municipalities can actually take to the bank, and raise bonds, for example.
So one of the things that happened during COVID was that most businesses transferred to online, right? So how does this Trade License Act affect online businesses?
Well, it contemplates online businesses.
Okay.
But we have different types of online businesses. We have some that do significant business and some that are just small. The idea with integrating or including e-businesses in this process, which, by the way, started with the whole idea, because as we pointed out earlier, this thing started from 2014. Even before COVID, we already had e-businesses in Belize. So it didn't start with COVID, it started before that. But the issue they had was similar to what some of the entertainers were facing, is that they wanted to engage with the banking system. And again, they came to the councils and say, look, I'd like to have a trade license because the bank is asking me for my source of funds. I'm telling them I have a business. And they're saying, well, show me your trade license, and I don't have one. So it is to regularize that and to help to make them legitimate business. It is not necessarily to use them as a great revenue stream. And so, if the parameters that are currently in the draft are too high, those can be adjusted, because we don't want to harm small entrepreneurs, people who are trying to start a business. We want to encourage them, but if by formalizing them, then they can move on and go on to bigger things. That is the intent. Our intent is to improve the business environment and improve what we call the ease of doing business in the country. And that's why the predictability in the new law is very important. So, and it's all started with established businesses, because they were tired of saying from year to year, my business, my trade license is changed. I have two of us are in the same street and we pay two different licenses because somebody knows somebody at the town council, so they charge him less and then charge me more. All of that's why the transparency in the formula is extremely important, so that everybody can feel that, you know what, I am being treated fairly, I'm being treated just like everybody else. And that's why publishing the methodology where you can self-calculate is extremely important. And locking it for 3 years means I don't have to worry about the trade license people till 3 years from now. And even if within now and next 3 years I improve my business, fix up the parking lot, fix up the bathroom, extend it some more, certain things will be excluded from the next assessment. So I don't have to, and so we're pushing that forward. And so it is extremely important, because we have an economy to build. We have had economic stagnation and decline before COVID. We had COVID. We had a loss of the tourism industry. We're now rebounding from that. And so we are trying to make it easy to do business, so you don't have to stress out about trade license. Let me just worry about it. Not for the small people. This doesn't affect them. This doesn't affect them. I will make sure it doesn't affect them. Because, and that is, I think, the concern that the people have out there. The small entertainer, the artists, and so forth. Those things are going to be addressed. We're going to fine-tune the law to make sure that they are not in any way harmed by what we're doing to improve the ease of doing business.
Some critics might say that, you're moving a little bit too too fast, right? That we're trying to slowly build back to something that is manageable. And I guess that is to everybody's opinion. But how long will it take if you need to make amendments? How long will those amendments take? And then when do you foresee putting this into action?
I think a very important question. Of course, we're at the first stage. It goes to House Committee. We get input from, individual persons, affected parties, interested parties, and then, we move to the second stage where, the bill goes through the second reading. Of course, by then, you would have already considered whatever, amendments were being proposed. We do not, if all goes well, and we're anticipating that, we will get the support to push the bill through the House, we do not see the bill being implemented until January of 2023. Okay.
Not bad.
I was going to ask, we spoke a little bit about, let's say, the controversial, let's say, social media, but in your actual meetings with the stakeholders so far, what's the feedback been like from the councils and other stakeholders?
So over the course of the years where we've tried the previous iterations of, finding what the standard methodology is, because that was the sticking point, how can we come up with a standard methodology? We did engage extensively and primarily with brick and mortar businesses. And as I mentioned, as a result of this exercise for the very first time in our history, the Ministry of Local Government and municipalities have geo-referenced actual data of productive footprint of every business in every single municipality. And all of that was looked at and analyzed. So people have been aware. And it really, for example, in engaging through the Chamber of Commerce, it came as a priority action item for them, requesting that something needed to be done to improve the system. And what we have is a vastly improved proposed methodology. It's not perfect, but it's a first step. And that has been generally embraced and accepted. I think people definitely are looking forward to the predictability and just so that they can plan and budget better. I think, as Minister and CEO have said, now we need to go down to perhaps the granular level to identify the impacts on specific sectors and adjust accordingly to make it more palatable, more affordable.
One more question before we wrap up, because we're wrapping up in until minute time. How will this affect churches and nonprofit organizations?
None whatsoever.
Why?
No, those are civic groups. They don't, as far as we are aware, they don't exist to make up as businesses and to generate a profit. So we're not engaged with those.
That was my final question for this morning. Thank you,
No, but
gentlemen.
before we go, if I can
Yes,
quickly,
please.
we are encouraging, the ministry is encouraging people. There are going to be House committee sessions to discuss this bill with interested and affected parties. Please make your representation. You can also, we are also in our release that we issued, there's a contact number for the Director of Local Government. Our Department of Local Government is absolutely interested in hearing the views of people so we can make sure that we move ahead, but move ahead in a way that is beneficial to the business community, because really what we want is to stimulate local economic growth, stimulate the national economy, improve people's lives, and ensure that we do it in a very sound way. So
How
that's what we
often
need.
are those meetings?
Well, I think it's just once, if I'm not mistaken,
Okay.
the House committee meeting. But if you're not able to make it to the House committee meeting, we have a contact number and an email in the release. You can also reach
You
us.
want to say that on air? The contact number and email?
I don't have the both the
Ishmael?
number and the contact number offhand, but it's in the release. Yes, and if you
Okay.
like, you can just simply go to our Facebook page. You can also reach us.
Okay.
In
I
that
I think
way.
Minister has a contact number in his
yes,
notes.
yes. Let me see. All right, certainly I can share this. So contact numbers at local government is 828-4285, 670-2643, or you can email at Clifford, as in CLIFFORD king@labour.gov.bz.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Minister.
Thank you very much
And
too. We do
Thank you for
appreciate the
having us.
opportunity.
Thank you, gentlemen. We hope that we hear more about this as the time continues to press on, and we have that conversation about who should be taxed and who shouldn't. And with that, we'll take another break, and when we come back, we'll have our final conversation for this morning, so stay tuned.